Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, one of the things that I've been able to report on this summer is the tremendous fishing that's been really found in the St. Lawrence River. We've had tournament after tournament that have set records never before seen, huge bass being caught. But I got to tell you, one of the things that it affords me is when we hold these tournaments, I get to talk to a lot of the anglers that are going out. And a couple of the local anglers that I know very well have told me that when they've been out practicing, they've caught some really huge fish this summer. One of them is my friend Steve Eldridge, who fishes out of Meissner. And Steve told me that he was out recently practicing for one of the tournaments. And he says, I hooked this huge fish. And he says, I thought it was a gigantic walleye. He said, when I finally got it in, it was this 48-inch northern pike. And, you know, people talk about big fish they catch, but he also was quick to go to his phone to show me the picture. And this fish was so huge. You know, I didn't really realize there were northern pike as big as there are in the St. Lawrence River. I fished it my whole life, and I'd never seen fish like this. And Stephen told me that his friend, who I don't want to name names without talking to these people, but one of his friends that's also a friend of mine that fishes all our tournaments for years was out practicing, and he caught a giant northern pike as well. And he showed me the picture of that fish. These are valid, you know, they look like giant muskies that were in the river. They aren't. They're northern pike, and this is amazing. But Brad also caught this huge sturgeon, and I got to tell you, sturgeon are protected. They're considered an endangered species for some reason. The DEC still considers them that, but we have a tremendous population of sturgeon in our waters, and this fish was huge. And I said, I'm wondering, how in the world would you catch one when you're fishing for bass? Because sturgeon, you know, they don't feed on gobies or anything like that. They feed on crustaceans along the bottom, and Stephen said, well, he was probably using a drop shot, which takes your bait down there towards the bottom, and it could have looked like anything. I don't know what sturgeon feed on, but this was really interesting. This was a huge fish as well. And what's really important is I think it's sometimes we forget, there's huge fish that live out there in the St. Lawrence River. We know that the smallmouth have got bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And the walleyes are huge, and they're all feeding. These fish are game fish, and they're feeding on gobies. But also, we have huge sheephead that live out there, and catfish, and sturgeon, and northern pike, and it's really amazing. So I think this is one of the real gems of the North Country, that we do have these big fish, that people can come here and think, okay, we can catch a fish of a lifetime. And it's possible. Anybody can go out there and get lucky. But just realize that catching these fish in the St. Lawrence River requires certain techniques and things that people don't have, that don't live by a big river system. You got to learn how to fish currents and depths, and these fish are constantly moving. But we do have this wonderful fishery here, and that's what we're celebrating. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.